In this video, I'm going to show you how to make my favorite thing to crochet, which is the granny square. First, I'm going to show you how to make a traditional granny square, and then I'm going to show you how to make what I like to call the condensed version of the granny square. After that, I'm going to go over a couple of tips and tricks that you can use to help with problems like tension or evenness in your squares, as well as how to block them. Let's get started. For materials, you're going to need a few different colors of yarn. I am using this Brava Sport Weight from Knit Picks. You're going to need a crochet hook. I am using a 5mm crochet hook. However, you can use whatever yarn and hook combination that you prefer. You're also going to need a tapestry needle to weave in your ends, and of course a pair of scissors to cut your yarn. The first granny square that I'm going to show you how to make is the traditional granny square. To start the first round of the granny square, we need to begin with a ring. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can begin your ring. The first way is to start with a slip knot, place it on your hook, and to chain 4. And then join with a slip stitch back into that first chain. And this forms a ring to work our stitches into. I like to start with a magic circle, so I'm going to show that method also. I like to just wrap the yarn around my finger in an X. I go underneath the first loop with my hook and then grab the top strand of yarn and pull it through. Then I take the ring off of my finger, and now I have a ring to work my stitches into. So first I'm going to start with a chain 3. Now chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So when I'm saying double crochet, I'm using US terms for this. I'm going to chain 3. And then I'm going to make what I like to call granny clusters. Now each of these clusters consists of 3 double crochets. So since I have my first double crochet here, which is actually our chain 3, I'm going to make 2 more double crochets. So I yarn over, insert my hook into the ring, yarn over, pull the yarn through, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. I'm going to do that again. Yarn over, insert your hook into the ring, grab the yarn and pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So in round 1, after I've made my first cluster, then I need to make my first corner. So I'm going to chain 3 for my corner. And now I'm going to make another cluster. So I'm going to go right back down into the ring and do 3 double crochets. Once again, US terms. There's 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm going to make another corner. So I'm going to chain 3 for my corner. So now I have 2 sides and almost 2 corners here. I need to make another cluster to make my third side of the granny square. So I'm going to make 3 more double crochets here. So now I have 3 sides and 2 corners. I need to make another corner. So I'm going to chain 3 to make my next corner. And then I'm going to make my last set of double crochets. So 3 double crochets to make that little granny cluster. And now I'm still missing a corner because I have 4 sides, but only 3 corners. So I need to chain 3 to make my last corner. Then to finish, I'm going to slip stitch back into the top of that original chain 3. I'm also going to tighten up the center of my magic circle there, and I'm going to cut my yarn and fasten off here. So I'm going to cut my yarn, and then I just simply like to yarn over and pull through and tighten that up to make a little secure knot, and then I'll weave in my ends. So that is the end of round 1. I just wove in my ends, so now you can see I have a little square. So I have 4 sides to my square. Each of those sides has 3 double crochets, and then I have 4 corners. Each of those corners is 3 chains. So now I'm going to start round 2. For round 2, I'm going to attach my yarn in the corner. You can use whatever method that you prefer for attaching your yarn. I'm just going to show you what I like to do here. I like to make a slip knot, leaving a little bit of a tail. And then I insert my hook into one of those corner spaces. I grab my slip knot and pull it through. And then I chain 1. That chain 1 gives me my first chain, and it also anchors my yarn down. So we need to do a chain 3 once again, counts as a double crochet. Since I already chained 1, I'm just going to chain up another 2. And now I'm going to make another corner. So to finish my cluster, I'm going to add 2 more double crochets. So there's my first cluster, and then I'm going to make a corner. So I'm going to chain 3. Then I'm going to make another cluster in that same chain 3 space from the round below. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So I've made my first corner. Now I need to work in the next corner, but I have these 3 stitches in the middle. Now every time you come across one of these clusters, you're just going to chain 1 and skip completely over them. So you're never actually working into the double crochets from the round below. You're always going to be working into chain spaces. Now I'm going to make another corner. So I'm going to work 3 double crochets. Chain 3 to make my corner, and then another 3 double crochets. So now I have my second corner, I have a cluster, chain 3, and another cluster, and now I've come to the double crochets from the round below. So I'm going to chain 1 and skip right over the top of them. I'm going to work another corner, so 3 double crochets, oops, chain 3 to make my corner, and then another 3 double crochets in that same corner. Now I'm going to chain 1 and skip over these stitches from the row or the round below and work my last corner. So 3 double crochets again. Chain 3 to form my corner, and then 3 double crochets. And now I've come to my last set of double crochets from the round below. So I'm going to chain 1, skip over them, and just like we did in round 1, I'm going to join with a slip stitch in the top of that chain 3. Just going to cut my yarn here, leaving a tail to weave in. And then I just like to chain 1 and pull it through and secure it. And that is the end of round 2. You can see round 2, we have 2 clusters in each corner now with a chain 3 to form the corner space. And along each side, we have a chain 1. So round 3 is very similar to the last 2 rounds, except this time we're going to be building stitches into the side of our chain 1 spaces. So once again, I'm going to start in a corner and attach my yarn, and you can use whatever method that you prefer for attaching your yarn. And I'm going to chain up 3. Since I already did my chain 1 there, I'm going to chain up another 2. I'm going to work fairly quickly in the corners since we've done this before. I'm going to do 2 more double crochets to form that first cluster, chain 3 to make my corner, and then another 3 double crochets to finish my corner. So from this point forward, you're always going to put 3 double crochets, a chain 3, and 3 double crochets in your corner space, no matter what. Now I've come to my cluster, and then I have a chain 1, another cluster, and my corner. And just like we did in round 2, when we skipped over this cluster, we're going to skip over this one. So I'm going to chain 1 to skip, and then I'm going to be putting another cluster in this chain 1 space from the previous round. So I'm going to make 3 double crochets once again. Now I've come to another cluster. I need to chain 1 and skip over that. And now I've reached a corner. So I'm going to make my corner spaces, or my corner stitches. So 3 double crochets, chain 3 to make my corner, and then another 3 double crochets in that same space. Now I've reached my next set of double crochets, so I'm going to chain 1, skip over them, and then make another set of double crochets in this chain 1 space. So now I have another set of double crochets from the round below, so I'm going to chain 1 and skip over those and work my corners. So 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. My corner is made, and there's another set of double crochets. So I'm going to chain 1, skip over those, and then work in my chain 1 space again. Another set of double crochets. So I'm going to chain 1 and work my final corner space. So 3 doubles, chain 3 to make the corner, and another 3 doubles. Now I'm working my last side here. So I have my 2 clusters from the row or the round below. I'm going to chain 1 and skip over the first one, and then work in that last chain space. And then I'm going to chain 1, and then once again going to end my round by slip stitching in the top of that first chain 3. Going to cut my yarn, fasten off, and weave in my ends. So that is the end of round 3. Now I'm going to add one final round, so I'm going to be working round 4. You can make as many rounds as you like just by repeating what I'm going to do here on round 4. So I'm going to start once again in a corner and join my yarn, chained 1, so now I'm going to do 2 more chains to make my first double crochet. So we did that chain 3 to make our first double. I'm going to make 2 more doubles. It's our first cluster, chain 3 to form the corner, and then another cluster. Now I'm going to work fairly quickly for this round. You can pause the video at any point to catch up or slow it down. So I'm going to chain 1. Once again, skipping over these 3 stitches from the round below, I'm going to be working in the chain 1 space. So anytime we come across a chain 1 space, we're going to place 3 double crochets in it. And then if we have another chain 1 space, I'm going to chain 1 and work in that one. So we're always putting chain 1s in between our clusters, except for when we come to our corners. So now I have a corner, but I have a group of stitches I need to skip over. So I'm going to chain 1 and skip over those, and then work my next corner. So if you decide to add additional rounds to your granny square, just follow these basic sort of rules here. Anytime you come to a corner, you make a corner, which is the 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 doubles. You're always going to chain 1 and skip over any double crochets from the round below, and then work 3 double crochets in that chain 1 space. I'm going to skip over these, so I need to chain 1 again and work in my next chain 1 space. Once again, chain 1 to skip over these double crochets and make my corner. So 3 double crochets, chain 3, and 3 more double crochets. Chain 1, skip, 3 double crochets, chain 1, skip, working in my corner space here with 3 double crochets, chain 3, and then 3 more. Reach the last side here. I'm going to chain 1, skip those doubles, and work into my next chain space, 3 doubles. And after you've made a few granny squares, you probably don't need to watch a video or read a pattern anymore. They're fairly simple once you get the hang of them. So I've made my last cluster of 3 double crochets. I have 1 cluster here. I'm going to chain 1 and skip over that. And just like I've done in the previous rounds, I'm going to join with a slip stitch in the top of that chain 3 and fasten off. That is the end of our round 4. Now I'm going to show you how to make what I like to call the condensed version of the granny square. And if you're asking, well, what's the difference and why would I make a condensed version? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first, you can see the 2 of these side by side. The condensed version, you're eliminating some of the chain stitches, and it just makes things a little bit more compact, where the traditional granny square is a little bit more open and airy. Another reason would be for functionality. So let's say you're making a very large project with granny squares, like a queen or king size blanket, or if you're making something that may put pressure or stretching on the granny square, such as a market bag or a purse. If you're using the traditional granny square, you might find that things get stretched out rather quickly and easily, where if you're using the more condensed version, you don't have all of those extra chain spaces, and it tends to keep things just a little bit more compact. To start the condensed version of the granny square, I'm going to begin the same way that I began my previous granny square, by forming a magic circle. And once again, you can chain 4 and join with a slip stitch to form a ring if that's your preference. I'm going to chain 3, just like I did before, to make my first double crochet. Then I'm going to make 2 more double crochets to form my first granny cluster. To make my corners, instead of chaining 3, I'm going to chain 2. So I'm going to chain 2 this time, and then make another cluster. So now I've come to where I need to make another corner. I'm going to chain 2. So the only difference in round 1 is that I'm chaining 2 in the corners instead of chaining 3. But everything else is still the same. So now I have 3 sides, 1 more corner, and I need to make my last side here. So 3 doubles. And now I've come to my final corner. So once again, only chaining 2 this time instead of 3. I'm going to cinch up my magic circle just a little bit there. And then I'm going to slip stitch in the top of that chain 3. And I'm going to snip my ends here and fasten off. So that is the end of round 1. For round 2, once again, I'm going to join in a corner space. And do my chain 3 for my first double crochet. Now I'm going to do 2 more double crochets to make my first granny cluster. And since we're in a corner, I'm going to chain 2. So once again, chaining 2 this time instead of chaining 3. Then I'm going to work another cluster, 3 double crochets into that same space. Now, if you remember, in the traditional granny square, you would chain 1 and skip over these 3 stitches. This time, I'm just going to skip over the 3 stitches without chaining 1. I'm just going to go right into my next corner and make a corner. So 3 doubles, chain 2, and 3 doubles. Once again, I have my 3 stitches from the round below. I'm not going to chain 1, I'm just going to simply skip over them and work my next corner. So the only difference in the granny square with the condensed version is we are not putting the chain 1s along the side, and we're only chaining 2 in the corners instead of 3. Otherwise, making the 3 double crochet clusters is the same. So no chains, skipping over these 3 stitches. I'm going to work my last corner. Chain 2. And my last 3. Once again, no chains. I'm just going to simply slip stitch into the top of that first chain 3 to close off my round. Fasten that off and pull it through. And that is the end of round 2. For round 3, once again, going to join in a corner and chain 3. I'm going to finish my first double crochet cluster by making 2 more double crochets. And since I'm in a corner, once again, only chaining 2. Then I'm going to put another 3 double crochets in this corner space. Now once again, I'm not going to chain 1. I'm just going to simply work in the space in between these 2 clusters. So we have our 3 double crochets here, and then our 3 double crochets on this side. I'm just going to simply work right in between those and place my 3 double crochets. So no chaining in between, and just working in between the clusters because there's no chain 1 space actually there. No chain. Once again, I'm just going to work straight into my corner, making my 3 doubles. I'm going to chain 2 for my corner and then 3 more doubles. Now I have my 2 granny clusters here. No chaining. I'm just going to simply work right in between those into that space in between. So there's no actual chain 1 space. You're just going to be kind of building your own space. No chaining. Just going to work right into that next corner. So now you can see where we're doing something very similar to the traditional granny square. We're just taking out a couple of chains. So chain 2, 3 doubles. Once again, no chain 1. I'm just going to place my 3 doubles in between those granny clusters from the round below. No chains, right into the corner. Chain 2, another 3 doubles. No chains in between. I'm just going to work right in between the 2 granny clusters from the round below. Now once again, reach the end, no chaining. I'm just going to put a slip stitch into the top of that chain 3. And fasten off my round. And that is the end of round 3. For round 4, I'm going to once again join in the corner and chain up 3 for my first double crochet. Two double crochets to form my first granny cluster, and then chain 2. Three double crochets. Now I'm going to work this the same as I worked the last round. So I'm not going to chain 1. I have my next 2 sets of 3 double crochets, my little granny clusters. I'm going to work right in between those. So there's no chain 1 space here. I'm not chaining 1. I'm just simply going right in between them and placing my 3 double crochets. So once again, no chaining, placing my hook right in between 3 doubles. No chaining, working right into that next corner space, 3 doubles. Chain 2, instead of chaining 3, oops, chain 2, and the other half of my corner space here. So I'm going to continue to work off camera till I get to the end. Just remember there's no chaining in between, and you're going to work in the space between the clusters. When you get to a corner, you'll make 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So continue to work around, and I'll meet you back here when we get to the end. Now I'm coming up to my last set of 3 double crochets here. And just like before, I'm not going to chain 1. I'm just going to simply slip stitch into the top of that chain 3. And fasten off. And that is the end of our granny square. Now I'm going to show you a couple of tips and troubleshooting methods that you can use for some common problems that you might run into when making your granny squares. The first one I'm going to show you is this one here. Now, if you notice that your granny squares are curling in a little bit on the corners or along the sides, this is what I like to call the granny square bowl. So if your granny square is shaped more like a bowl than a square, it probably means that your tension is too tight. So there's a couple of things that you can do. First thing that you can do is to go up a hook size or two. So if you started with a 5mm hook, you can jump up to a 5.5 or even a 6mm hook. Another thing that you can do is to try to just loosen up your yarn tension. So that could be just allowing the yarn to move a little bit more freely through your fingers. It also starts with your posture and your hands and how you're holding your muscles. So by starting with your shoulders and working down to your fingertips, you can just do some stretching and relaxation to allow your muscles to be more relaxed. That will also help your tension to be more loose. Another thing that you can do is if you're doing the condensed version of the granny square like I have here, where there's no chain spaces in between, you can try adding a chain space in between those clusters to allow it to relax a little bit more. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have a granny square that is either overly loose or with uneven tension. And this is what I like to refer to as the granny square potato chip. So if you notice that your square is just kind of wonky, if it's kind of wavy along the side like a potato chip, it's probably due to either uneven tension or overly loose tension. So there's no real way to cure uneven tension. The only thing that I can suggest is practice, practice, practice. The more you practice your stitches and holding even tension, the more consistent your granny squares will look as far as the corners and the sides. Now, if you have overly loose tension, you could do the opposite of what we did in this situation. So you could try to size down a hook size or two. So if you're using a 5mm, you could size down to a 4.5 or even a 4. Another thing you can do is to just slightly tighten up your yarn tension. Now that doesn't mean to tighten up your body or your hands, because you don't want to cause any muscle strain or injury to your hands or wrists. You could try to hold your working yarn, wrap it around your finger a little bit to maybe hold the tension of your yarn a little bit tighter itself, but not actually tensing up your body. Another thing is, if you are doing the traditional granny square like I've done here, and you notice that I have the chain spaces in between and the 3 chains in the corner, if you've tried what I mentioned before and it's still kind of loose or wonky, you could try doing a condensed version of the granny square and see if that makes things a little bit more consistent. If you tried all of the tips that I just gave you and still would like to make your granny square just a little bit more square, you could also try blocking. Now, they do sell blocking kits specifically for granny squares that have basically like a pegboard with little pegs to set the corners of your granny squares on. They also sell blocking boards, which are basically like a foam board, but you could probably use things around your house and not have to spend the extra money on blocking supplies. So one thing that you could do is use a piece of thicker cardboard from, let's say, a shipping box. If you have a kid's foam play mat or a yoga mat or something that's made out of foam, you could also use that. And basically what you would do is take the 4 corners of your granny square and stretch them out to the size that you like. You then place either T-pins or tacks or something in the corner to hold it down. Then you could just use like a water mister and spritz it with a little bit of water, or you could even use a steamer. Just be careful not to get too close with the steamer, especially if you're using acrylic yarn, as it could melt. Then you allow your granny square to dry, and then after it's dry, you can take it off of your blocking mat and it should be the size and shape that you prefer. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up as well as subscribe to my channel for more crochet tutorials.